Hello and welcome back to another video where we contemplate the Aries North Node, because what else do we have to do? For me anyway, there's literally nothing else I would rather be doing than contemplating and taking in new information and bouncing it like a pinball around my internal system and my belief structure. And sometimes those pinballs will like go right through a wall, like just totally demolish it, and then you find out that that demolished wall was load bearing, and now there's like a whole tower moment in your belief structure. Like, taking in new information is not for the faint of heart. And this whole Aries North Node chapter, July of 2023 through January of 2025, is a lot about kind of being on the hunt for our own identity, figuring out what is it that we are identifying ourselves as and with. What are we identifying ourselves as? What are we identifying ourselves with? And it's really interesting to me, this concept of identity. And I actually recorded this whole video, and then when I stopped it, it was like, oh, you don't have any disk space, so like, it didn't happen. So I was like, okay, so that didn't happen. But that was a warm-up, like a 50-minute warm-up. So now we're here on version 2, and this is completely different than what version was, what 1 was, but of course that is the way. So identity is a really interesting concept to me, where I have known from the time I was little that like there were pieces of me that, as I look back now over, my life, I can see these threads are constant. And then there are other threads that like came and went, and pieces of my identity that like just never seemed to last. Like I would join something, or I would try something, or I would, start something, and then it would just be over. Like in a matter of time, it just would always be over. And there was very little consistent that was going on in my sense of self. And I understand that in many ways now. I think like deepening our understanding of ourselves, helping us to make sense to ourselves, can be part of this like clarifying our identity experience that the Aries North Node is kind of like really inviting us into. Like, I see it as like this beautiful carnival. Like, carnivals can be kind of creepy, but like a really beautiful one, and like beautiful lights, and just the most pleasant evening you've ever felt, and like kind of dusk and these lights that are strung up everywhere, and then these beautiful fabrics of all of these different tents and all of these different experiences that you can go into and have. And as you have the experience, this is very Aries, as you have the experience, that's when you get to see who you are, is right in the middle of the experience. So like, you walk into this fun house, and here's this set and setting that's happening, and you see the thing, and in that moment, something rises within you, and either you're into it, you freaking love it, and like, okay, there's another piece of your identity, or you hate it and you're scared of it and you want to run away, and like it doesn't feel good in your body, and it makes you breathe fast, and it just is like, lean away. Great, that's information. That's another piece of your identity, of like who you are and what's real for you. And that exploration process is like never really over. And one of the pieces that I do want to add in here, that I wonder how many people around my channel can resonate with these two things. Number one, I have a Gemini stellium, and of like personal planets, of like my personal, very core sense of myself is in Gemini, which is a mutable air sign. The whole point is that it just moves like the wind. It can blow here, it blows there, it changes direction on a whim, like it just, and then there it is. And it's just this like tornado of information. And that's very much how my insides feel. It's like just a tornado of information, just constantly revolving. And there's always these new bits getting sucked into the tornado, but that doesn't mean anything is leaving. It's just a bigger tornado the older I get. Like, that's who I am, is a tornado of information. That's the first time I've ever said that. And I don't know if I've ever described myself quite so accurately. So that's really fun. There's another piece of my identity, woohoo. I know, like, the language I would have used is like, I like to learn every day. Like, that's who I am. I like to absorb information every single day. And I attribute that Gemini stellium to that. So heavy Gemini energy could very well be correlated with this sense of like not really being able to pin down who you are. And with that, I would kind of expand it to like all of air energy. So like if heavy Libra or Aquarius or Gemini, any of the air signs where it really isn't about you, it's about the information, it's about the data, it's about like the observation and the information and the equation, and like there's a scientific process, a very emotionally detached, a self-detached perspective process going on inside of air energy. So with heavy air energy in your natal chart, that may be one way where a sense of identity is a little bit harder to come by. Like on the flip side, like if you had heavy fire energy, then that would show that like your sense of identity is a little bit more ingrained, a little bit more solid, no matter kind of what's going on. There's a ton of constant threads that like, this is who you are. It's pretty well carved out. And there's a lot of other things that come and go, but who you are is pretty much the same. Like my mom will tell me that she's like, Carly, I've been the same person since I was in 7th grade. Like since she was 12 years old, she's like been the same person. And she means that. And she means that as a response to not being able to understand why I seem to go through a midlife crisis like every 2 years. I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. She don't get it, and I don't either, or I haven't for a large part of my life. And one of the pieces that is really coming into focus for me is that there's a beauty in the ability to be a tornado of information, to have that be myself, my sense of self. Like the tornado of information, like basically it's like my identity is that. Like it isn't something that you can grab onto. It isn't something that you can pin down. It's not something that you can even understand like all in one go, because it's a 360-degree revolving cyclone of individual data points. Like I'm very much picturing on the movie Twister when they're trying to send the little robot thing with the little balls like up into the tornado so that they can like map what the tornado even is, because you just can't see what's inside of it. You can't see it all at once because there's always the part that's behind you. That is what my identity feels like. And then I came to human design, where I learned that I have what's called on human design an open identity center. And I actually have 7 open centers. There's only 9 on the human design chart. So I only have 2 that are defined. I have 1 channel of energy that's defined, and everything else is open. And what that means on human design, the open center is going to take in information from the outside world and amplify it. And at that point, you with the open center are experiencing an intensified version of the environment, of the experience of what's going on around you. And compare that to somebody, let's say, who had like every single center filled in. They're not taking in a whole lot of energy from the environment around them, so their sense of self would be like rock solid. You could pluck them up out of this situation and put them in a completely different situation, and you're gonna get the same exact person. Me, I feel like Heart to Heart is a perfect example, where you see me sitting down with like different people, and you can literally see a little bit of the cyclone of who I am, as far as like you'll get a completely different experience of me depending on who I sit down with. And to me, that really is a reflection of that open identity center, where the gift of having the open identity center, again, the gift of not having a sense of self that's in there, as infuriating as that can be, the beauty of it is that you are able to take in the identity of another person and amplify it. And then you are that. And I'm also on the leading edge of my own understanding of myself in this very moment as I sit here and realize, like, holy fuck, no wonder people are so triggered by me. All I do is show you an amplified version of who you are. And some people, like, I have not ever really talked about this out loud because I can't really bring myself to understand it in that self-detached way. Like, it feels very egoic to say this out loud, which is some people fall in love with me like that, like just on an instant. And like, it was so weird in my romantic relationships, like going from, you know, my first kind of serious boyfriends in like early high school all the way through like now, is like every time I would get into another romantic relationship, one, they always said, I love you first. They always said, I love you faster than I was ready to say I love you. And it just kept getting faster at like how fast someone would tell me that they love me. And it never made sense to me. But now I have a much more balanced perspective on it because I can see there are also people who hate me just as fucking fast. And they're both equally confusing to me. But now I have enough of the hate. I've like opened myself up enough to criticism, that I've experienced enough hate for me, that like it's really put it into this perspective of like all these open centers that I have to like, for the most part, if I want to experience myself, I need to be in solitude. I need to not have anybody else to reflect, because I'll just reflect the other person. And they call that mirroring. And it's like a neuro-linguistic programming thing where it is like you match their volume, you match their word choice, you hold your energy in a similar place to theirs. And when you do that successfully, the effect can be instantaneous love. And like a great level of disarming, a great level of letting your guard down and like letting your real self be seen. And that's the feedback that I get a lot on Heart to Hearts, is that I create a safe space. And how I understand that through this language of human design and like all of these open centers is it's like a deep reading of the other person, and it moves into the territory of something else that I was listening to a podcast episode about this morning, and that is fawning. And fawning is like, as a trauma response, it means to abandon yourself and befriend whoever it is that's keeping you safe. And I think I'm like an expert level fawner. Like, I'm very good at it. And in other language, you might say that I'm good at sales tactics. Like, I'm good at talking to other people and kind of like getting them to see things the way that I'm seeing them. And is that manipulative? Yes. Yes. I feel like my energy, part of my identity that I really wrestle with, is like the dark side of what my skills are capable of. And what I wrestle with and how I gather balance in my identity, in this like tornado of identity, is like the skills themselves are completely neutral. You know, so like your ability to manipulate, your ability to talk someone into something, that's neutral. And so the choice and the light versus dark is, what are you choosing to do with it? And so for a long time, I have felt and really wrestled with, I think this is why I've watched The Vow on repeat for years, because I identify with Keith Raniere and the skills of what he is capable of. He's a master at disarming people, and AKA creating a safe space. He's a master at getting people to open up to him. And I'm like, I can do that. I can get people to fall in love with me like instantaneously. And I say get them to, because as I look back on it, I don't know that I've ever had like a 100% authentic from the start relationship. Like even looking back at the start of my most recent relationship, I see that mirroring process of like, I am a chameleon. I'm a shapeshifter. I have heavily mutable energy. I am a tornado of information that can take these different shapes depending on the circumstance that I'm in. And again, I wrestle with shame around even admitting that like, this is who I am and like, this is what I'm capable of. And this is somebody that somebody like Keith Raniere would be so fascinating to me, because I see so much of myself in him. And that scares me because he's a scary dude. He made some choices that like, I look at the documentary, especially season 2, especially getting into the later parts of season 2, where you start to really get to like the horror of what he used his skills to do in the world. And I look at myself and I'm like, honestly, a little bit scared of myself. I'm scared of my own power. I'm scared of having influence. Like this feels very Leo North Node. I feel very scared of having any kind of real influence in the world because I don't want to cause harm. And if you don't want to cause harm, then don't influence. Like, I'm starting to see how closely interwoven manipulation and influence are. And like at this point, we have a job in our society called influencer. And what is an influencer? It's a manipulator. It's a mass manipulator. It's the masses deciding this is who I want to manipulate me. And so now brands are recognizing that, and influencer marketing is becoming a thing where the people get paid huge sums of money to say things to the people that have said, I want you to manipulate me. So like when we start looking at like taking in information, like air energy, the shadow of air energy, when we take in information, when we are physically in the same space with another person, when we listen to a podcast, when we, read a book, when we expose ourselves to the energy of another person, when we take in information from the outside world, air energy, we are allowing it to influence us. It will happen automatically. When you take in that information, it has an influence. And the only way for information to not have influence is for you to not hear it, you to not take it in. This is my own personal belief, and I'm kind of excited to test that theory. Because having influence doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be just like the thing. It could also mean that you rebel against the thing. But even rebelling against the thing is still that thing influencing you, I believe. Again, these are theories I'm excited to test, but like this is a deep dive. I'm suddenly realizing into my own identity and battling with the shadows of what has kept me historically out of embracing my identity. And what I want to say is like, if I embrace my identity all out, what that would look like is like, I'm seeing nothing but this beautiful picture of like using these skills for good, you know, like to be one who is capable of these tactics. Like I see exactly what they're doing because I know how to do that, you know, and then taking that skill set and opening it up for anybody and everybody who wants to understand that playbook. Like I want to help people understand that playbook. And one of the pieces that I've given you in this video, for example, is every time you're listening to someone, they're influencing you, and influence is basically manipulation. So careful who you listen to, myself included. That is why part of my messaging is consistently to guide you back to yourself, to use that as my own like guiding light, like right here in front of my face is like, I have this kind of, it's like a governor on a truck motor, like where it won't let you go past a certain point. Like I have this self-imposed limit, this self-imposed commitment to myself that says, when other people try to give me their power, I will deflect it back to them. I won't let anyone give me their power. And that is a practice that I feel like goes along hand in hand with becoming an example of how to be empowered and to use it for good. There's so much out there about abuses of power and how these people in positions of power are abusing the power that they have over people. And two things. Number one, abusing your power is always a choice, right? Like there are plenty of examples, and I want to find them and I want to meet them and I want to talk to them, I want to interview them. There are plenty of examples of people who are empowered and using it for good. I'm going to make a whole video about a guy called Daryl Davis. Amazing. So number one, having power is neutral, and what you choose to do with it, whether you abuse it or you leverage it for good, that is a personal choice. So it's optional. Having power doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be corrupt and evil. Having power doesn't make you evil. And number two, I feel like my purpose and part of my work and what I really get excited about, fired up about, is inoculating people to the traps and the tactics that manipulators use. You know, like the way people can get you to believe what they want you to believe. Like it's like pressure points in your psyche. I mean, I don't know how to put it 100% into words, but I do know how to do it. How to create a safe space is a function of this. I'm manipulating people into feeling safe. I'm guiding them to believe something that they didn't believe before. In my presence, they feel safe. And then, you know, what happens next is something that, like, at that point, I have this self-imposed commitment to myself that says, as I allow for them to feel safe and they open up to me and they get more in touch with their own power, I will not take it from them, even if they want me to have it. I will do everything I can to guide it back into their hands, to help them to hold it with the skill of holding their own power and not just automatically, reflexively giving it away to someone else. So inoculating people is really important to me as far as like bringing more and more people into connection with their own personal power such that they are immune to these tactics. Like basically, like, I want to give all the secrets away so that even I couldn't influence you even if I wanted to, you know, so that like basically the bottom line of what I see is that, and part of what helps me to overcome the shame that I have around resonating with a Keith Raniere in the first place, like I overcome that shame and I depersonalize that shame. I take it off of myself because I realize that Keith Raniere as an example, the malignant narcissist is the umbrella of individuals that he falls under. There's a lot in the culture currently that wants to paint these individuals as a disease. And I feel, you can tell how deeply I feel about this by how much I slow down and get really intentional. Oh, and I feel lightheaded. It feels so good to be of service to this idea. Because painting the malignant narcissist as the disease is a hindrance to true healing. And I want to unpack that a little bit as far as why I believe that to be true. Because I personally believe that the malignant narcissist, the rise of the malignant narcissist, is a symptom of the disease of personal disempowerment. A civilization of people who were taught to obey an external authority figure. The problem is not the cult leader. The problem is that he's able to shapeshift and dance around in a way where the followers are able to project that he's the authority figure. He's the one that we've been waiting for. That ability to even try to recognize anyone else as the authority, to project authority outside of yourself, that is the disease. The malignant narcissist is co-opting this disease, and this symptom is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because we're ready to put it back into alignment. And what does that look like? It looks like personal self-empowerment. People who are personally empowered, they are wired into themselves, into their gut, into their own self-approval, their own inner knowing of the value of their beingness. People who are internally validating themselves. They're the safe place for themselves. It is my theory, it is my thesis at this point that those people are immune to malignant narcissists. Like, just like during COVID, it was like, what the fuck is going on? Because some people catch this thing and die, and some people get exposed and either they don't get it at all or they get it and they're completely asymptomatic. Like, what is happening here? And I'm not even a scientist or a doctor or anything, but my intuition tells me the immune system, something to do with the immune system and the body's strength and readiness to fight off an attack. And we have an energetic immune system, and it's housed in our aura. And completely different language that I've never put it into these terms before, but like what I do is read the energetic immune system of the person sitting in front of me. And this gives me all of the information that I need to know as far as where to support and where to press, and where, like I said, it's like pressure points in your psyche, like the energetic immune system surrounding each one of us. And a person who is a safe place for themselves, who is connected inside of themselves to their animal body, to their instincts, to their self-preservation system that will keep you alive at all costs, even if that means Stockholm syndrome and creating some kind of fawning response where you're befriending the people who are abusing you. Like, our system will keep us alive no matter what. So as we go deeper into our identity, there's a lot to unpack, as you can see. Like, I have no idea what your identity is. I have no idea what metaphors or analogies you would put to yours, what mental imagery. Like, I don't know if yours is some kind of spinning tornado or if it's something completely different, but like, hopefully a conversation like this opens up a space where there's a freedom within your own mind to ask yourself some questions about, you know, am I scared of any part of my identity? Right? Like, is there a part of my identity that I keep off limits from myself because I'm actually scared of that thing? Or maybe I hate that part of myself, you know? And like, these different compartmentalizations within our own identity are very much the content of what we're here to explore in this Aries North Node chapter, this 18-month cycle of really getting into touch with our own personal identity. And I do also want to talk a little bit about fawning, as I had a big aha moment this morning that really unlocked, I think, I don't know, anybody who's been watching, like, I feel like I'm relaxing into myself day by day by day by day. And this video, I'm already having a vulnerability hangover. It's so much deeper into my being, into the reality of my being than I've ever been on video, for sure, before. And a huge piece of that was this podcast that I listened to this morning. It's linked in the description box. It's on Mark Vicente's podcast with Dr. Ingrid Clayton. And she wrote a book called Believing Me. And already that title moves a lot of energy inside of me, as far as like struggling for a really long time in my life to believe my own felt experience of things. Like, I felt like there was a lot of gaslighting in my childhood where I was incredibly emotionally sensitive and would speak of things that other people would tell me, no, that's not true. No, that's not real. Like, you're misreading the situation. And so I know now that's called gaslighting. When you try to talk somebody out of who they are and like what their experience is, like, you're gaslighting them. That's what that means. And so even you think about like something as innocent as somebody's really upset and it's like, you're okay, it's fine, you're fine. That's gaslighting. That's manipulation, because they're clearly not fine. They're clearly upset about something. So like, it's so innocent. It does not have to be malicious when we gaslight people. Like, I think generally a lot of times we really do want them to feel better. Usually though, from a codependent standpoint of, we need them to feel better so we can feel better, right? Their upset is upsetting us. And so you need to stop this because I don't have time to be upset right now. So you're not allowed to be upset either. So like, it's incredibly self-centered and narcissistic when we gaslight other people. I can definitely see where that does harm to the individual. I feel like I resonate with the harm of gaslighting as far as the second guessing and the self-doubt and the never really being able to validate myself, needing somebody else to agree that I was good or that I had done good or whatever. And how the aha moment that I had this morning was how much my YouTube journey has helped me to kind of like come face to face with this dynamic of fawning, because like the guy who coined the term fawning, Pete Walker, 2013, he stubbed his toe on a table and apologized to the table. Fawning. Like, self-abandonment and chronically prioritizing the other person, what's happening with the other person. And even if that's an inanimate object like a table. I've apologized to plates before. On video, I've apologized to my plant multiple times. Like, on and on and on, like chronic fawning response. And this podcast episode this morning talked about how, like, it's a safety seeking behavior to be in chronic fawning, like where it's basically because you don't feel safe and you are trying to find safety by staying in the good graces of whoever it is that you're dealing with. And this gave me this aha moment about YouTube where basically, like, I have been in a chronic fawning response with kind of the whole world via YouTube. Like, having this thought that, like, I can't offend anyone, I can't make anybody mad, like that is that fawning, like that I can't be upsetting to anybody else. And what you're saying, the deeper underlying inference is that their feelings are more important than mine. You know, like keeping them happy and calm is more important than me getting to be who I really am. And, you know, this aha moment and getting to understand my own relationship with this fawning response, this safety-seeking behavior, lets me see where I have been holding myself apart from pieces of my identity because I don't want to upset anyone. I truly do not want to cause harm. I really don't. And I am, through my healing journey, like through the Taurus North Node, I talked extensively about our own personal empowerment journey and each of us individually becoming empowered. And what that means once you have power is that then you also have the choice of what are you going to do with it. And this part of me that has been scared of myself having power has also been keeping myself apart from my power. It's been keeping myself disempowered, has been keeping myself in this chronic fawning response where I'm in a codependent relationship with the whole goddamn world. I can't make anybody mad ever. That is a teeny, non-existent box to have to survive it. And I've said many times lately, we get to this point where which one is more painful, being stifled into non-existence or being rejected, upsetting someone. And this Aries North Node chapter is absolutely tipping the scales into, it is becoming more and more satisfying to express our true identity and more painful to stifle our true identity, all at the same time. You know, that's what I think I mean when I say cosmic forces are kind of like pushing us in this Aries direction. It's like it's rewarding us for being authentic and it's making it really painful to be inauthentic all at the same time. So it's painful over here, like poking you, and it's a carrot dangling on this side. So like there's reward. There's like massively like blow your mind beautiful outcomes when you just say what's real for you, when you just say what's honest, when you just own your authenticity and say what's true, even though somebody else might be really upset about this. You know, this has the capacity to really hurt their feelings, and it's what's true for me. So what do we do? You know, having the power means that we have the choice of speaking up or not. And I think that chronic fawning response and generally being disempowered, again, it's kind of that self-perpetuating cycle where there's safety in playing nice with others. And this Aries North Node dynamic, the Libra South Node dynamic, is a bottomless pit. Playing nice with others in order to find safety, in order to find external validation for who you are and that you're doing okay, that is a bottomless pit that, you know, possibly we have to hit that bottom of the bottomless pit as far as really going overboard in seeking safety outside of ourselves, finding that authority who can give us the answer, and really falling off a cliff because of that method of finding safety. That, like, when you look for love outside of yourself, when you look for safety and validation outside of yourself, prepare to, well, it comes back to, at that point, you are essentially handing your power over to whoever it is that's going to give you safety. You're like trading your power for safety. And at that point, the person who is supposed to be providing safety, they now have your power and they're empowered and they get to choose what to do with it. And Libra South Node means most likely they will be abusing any power that they have over you until you have reallocated that power inside of yourself. You trust yourself. You trust your own instincts. You trust your own hairs on the back of your neck. You trust your own scalp tingles. You trust your own gut to tell you, like, something's not right here. Like, once you stop talking yourself out of your own instincts and you trust yourself, which I totally understand, like, is so hard to do, like, especially if there's parts of yourself that you're actually scared of, or that you're ashamed of, or that you're mad at, or that you hate, or that whatever the case is. Like, if that's, you know, prevalent in your sense of identity, that you do not like the pieces that are in there, trusting yourself, like, that's who you have to trust, or all of these things that you don't like. So you kind of have to like yourself quite a bit before you can really trust yourself. And I think that's where, again, it's so easy to look at narcissists and be like, they're so self-centered, they're so, like, in a malignant way, like toxic self-centeredness. And again, I think that is really harmful to, it's at least a distraction from, like, truly what's going on, as far as the true problem is ever believing that an external authority figure has your answer. As long as that is alive on the planet, malignant narcissists will have something to feed on, right? Like, it's just a symptom. So if you heal that disease of looking outside of ourselves for an authority figure, if every single person on the planet was trusting themselves as their own individual authority figure, malignant narcissists would have no one to victimize. And of course, should they be doing what they're doing? Probably not. But who's going to stop them? Not somebody giving them their power. Right? Like, in order to stop them, you have to reclaim their power. So actually, the malignant narcissist is a catalyst for radical individual self-empowerment amongst the masses. Stories like The Vow, Keith Raniere, and what he did to these people, any of these stories of what these guys and girls, women, men, it doesn't, both, anybody who has power has the choice of, are you going to abuse it or are you going to leverage it for good? And we have many, many examples of people who are abusing their power. And the only thing that is going to eradicate that is more and more and more people claiming their own power and then using it for good. You know, it's so easy to be disempowered and look at somebody who's having power and saying they're doing it wrong. Well, you get your own power and you do it differently. Show us what that looks like. You know, so much energy spent blaming and projecting, and they're the bad guy and they're the evil one and just totally evil, and we have all these names, and it's like this is such a distraction from the real issue, which is you individually, each and every single person needs to be their own authority figure. We need to rethink how we parent children on this planet. We need to rethink how we teach obedience. Obedience is the problem, not malignant narcissists. They're feeding off of our posture of obedience. And where the fuck did that come from? Our parents, our churches, our schools, our legal system. Obey, 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 or there will be punishment. This is wrong. This is fundamentally backwards, and toxic narcissism is simply a symptom of looking outside of ourselves for authority. And I think, you know, the Aries North Node chapter is a huge bridge over this divide of what really needs to happen is individual self-empowerment. And I think it's fascinating that the Aries North Node chapter is happening where we have the first 6 months of the Aries North Node, like the rest of 2023, is Pluto in Capricorn, the end of a 15-year cycle that is all about revising our structures of authority and revising our structures of power and our hierarchies, and like how do we imbue our individual power into collective structures that then serve the good of the all. This is a great mechanism when there's benevolence baked in at every single level. But Pluto in Capricorn illuminated that a lot of the systems that we have given our power to are actually the very thing abusing us. And so seeing through the illusion of external authority, like we need to heal the wound of believing that an external authority is going to take care of us, is going to keep us safe. This has to evolve. And so very beginning of 2024, for 20 years, we have Pluto going through Aquarius. And that is too supporting radical self-empowerment, radical individualization. And this is only further adding to the momentum of the individual trusting and empowering the individual with the individual's power, the individual becoming a closed loop, the individual healing its energetic immune system, aka becoming a safe place for itself, becoming a place where you have your own sovereignty. You possess the sovereignty to listen to your instincts. This is the medicine. Sovereignty, individual sovereignty, people knowing how to hold their own power, people knowing how to retain their own sovereignty. This is the medicine. And this, I wish, is what all of the energy given to this self-empowerment debate, where it often goes down the rabbit hole of blaming the narcissist. I wish we could reclaim every ounce of that energy and point it towards empowering individual sovereignty. Forget about the narcissist. They will evaporate as there's no more food for them to eat. Right? They're feeding off of these broken down energetic immune systems. They're feeding off of these wide open energetic immune systems where we're willing to give away everything that we are if someone will only look at us and love us. You know, like I was listening to this one story where this lady was like, she had this whole history of abuse, and I don't want to minimize that, but the meeting of the toxic narcissist was, she looked at him and he looked at her and he smiled at her, and in that moment her whole life changed. And in my opinion, that is a wide open energetic immune system. If one instant can reallocate your sense of gravity to this other person, that's the problem, not the other person, right? gravity is just a force. And where is our anchor pulling us? Like, which gravitational pull? Is it pulling us deeper down into ourselves? Is it pulling us deeper into holding and expanding into even more of our own power and our own individual sovereignty? Like, what does it really look like to have full power over yourself? What does that look like? And that is ultimately the question that brought me together with this fawning contemplation of like chronic fawning and never wanting to upset anyone, never wanting to make anyone mad, and the little teeny box that put me in. And now how I'm, like slowly kind of like wiggling the bounds outward as far as like how willing I am to upset someone else. And again, I go back to, I do not want to cause harm, but I have to really get specific about my values as far as like, I want to be me. For my own sanity, I have to be me. I believe we have to be ourselves if we want to hold on to our sanity. Again, totally my belief. And so, which is more important? External peace and harmony with the group around me, or my own personal sanity? And when those two things can't happen simultaneously, it becomes critically important that we know which one is on top. Peace and harmony with the group around us, or our sanity, our individuality, our personal sovereignty. That gives us the power to change our life at any moment. It gives us the power to get up and walk away at any moment. Which one is more important? And maybe there's other things in the mix as well that factor into that, but our behavior tells the tale of which is more important. And as I look at my YouTube career, I can really see how much anxiety I struggled with around, I want to portray this in a digestible way. I myself want to be as palatable and digestible for other people as possible. Again, that's a manipulation to like, so that they'll hear me, so that they will take in what I'm saying, and so that they will like me. And that is where, again, it can get really problematic, because at that point, am I being likable or am I being authentic? And only the individual can know, right? Like only I can know in any moment, am I being authentic or am I being likable? And I still catch myself, like there are moments where, again, heart to heart is a great example. There are moments where I catch myself masking, where I catch myself like really playing up my positive facial expressions, and like really through my facial expressions, like encouraging the other person. And again, part of that, I've gotten really good feedback about how easy it is to open up to me and how easy it is to say things to me that maybe they've never said out loud at all. So I get good feedback on that, but again, it doesn't feel good on the inside. So even if people don't like talking to me as much, I still practice taking the mask off and sitting there with a neutral facial expression. You know, that's one practice of healing my fawning that I'm just now making the connection I've been doing for a few months, is like trying to sit there with a neutral facial expression, try not to compulsively smile at another person. It's hard. It's really hard. If you've ever tried it, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments as far as like, it's so, especially when you grow up like in the South or in the Midwest, like in a culture where being friendly is like everything. And in a small town, like that's, I mean, everybody knows everybody. So there's no such thing as like blending into the crowd and like not being, everybody knows everybody. So learning to be friendly is kind of, again, like fitting in and belonging and not standing out, not being singled out by the crowd, which is a very scary thing, especially in a small town where I mean, there are real consequences. Like when you go to the grocery store and the cashier knows all the drama and is giving you a dirty look or makes comments under their breath. Like, I mean, that's awful to like have your personal life be part of like what's being reflected to you out as you try to be a part of your community. Like the lack of privacy is kind of traumatic, I would say. And so, yeah, like in the small town culture, again, like that fawning response is really encouraged as far as put on a happy face, don't draw attention to yourself, like people will talk, the small town rumor mill, etc. And this experiment of keeping a neutral facial expression and letting myself get animated when it's real, right? When it's authentic, but otherwise it feels like kind of coming out of survival mode to even practice keeping my face in a neutral position where like it is like a survival, like living in survival mode to just like be all smiley and friendly and compulsively friendly to people. And when it's not real, it feels like, and that I think is, you know, I could wrap it up here as far as the Aries North Node, and what the Libra South Node is helping us to see is when we are faking our social interactions, it is going to become extremely painful, extremely agitating on the inside, like a cheese grater on your soul kind of sensation. That inauthenticity is going to feel like an itchy sweater that you just like cannot wait to take off kind of thing, Libra South Node. And then on the other side, as we lean into and as we proactively lean into, especially our Aries North Node, that feels like a receptivity and a flow and a comfort and a level of safety that the bottomless pit of seeking safety outside of ourselves, it was never going to yield as much safety as if we really do allow ourselves to be a safe place for ourselves, if we allow ourselves to be authentic, which is another way of saying that. So there was a lot here. If you made it to this point in the video, comment cheesecake down below, just something completely random, just so that I know that you made it here, because holy moly, like this was kind of a roller coaster ride. It felt so good though. It felt so relaxed and in my body and doing what feels right and honest and true to me. And fully embracing that, you know, some people aren't going to like what I'm doing here. And if that's the case, no hard feelings whatsoever. This may not be a space for everyone. And I'm okay with that. So that feels like a huge win along this Aries North Node spectrum. I wonder if you can relate to that so far in this Aries North Node chapter. If you liked the video, take a second and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're into this content and you haven't already. Leave a comment down below. Cheesecake if you made it this far. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It has literally been my pleasure to create this transmission. It's been very healing for myself, and I hope there was something helpful in it for you too. Until next time, I do hope that you will take such good care of yourself, and so will I.